Hyoubu Kyouske is a powerful ESPer who decides to wreak havoc on a random city and after causing destruction, requests the military to capture him for his crimes. Hyoubu is brought to a particular prison designed for unusual criminals. Upon his arrival, Hyoubu's attention is caught by a guy named Andy, who steps up for him during his argument with the prison warden. Hyoubu is thrown into a confinement cell along with Andy, where he gets interested in Andy's personality and asks him to join him and his team. Andy agrees on the terms that Hyoubu will get him out of the prison, and Hyoubu gets to work not too late in the prison as he makes Andy eat the drugged food the jail workers had prepared for him. Soon after the lunch, Andy gets into a fight in the prison, just like usual, but ends up getting crushed due to the effect of the drug this time. Andy wakes up to realize that Hyoubu had helped him get out of the older cell, and he follows Hyoubu's lead to come across a little girl, Yugiri, who is also a powerful ESPer, captured in the prison. Hyoubu is about to get Yugiri out when the jail warden decides to retaliate and brings a monster made from countless ESPer parts to attack our guys. Hyoubu puts on a show and takes his limiter off to absolutely destroy the monster. The group escapes the prison to meet Hyoubu's team of ESPers called Pandra and their ship called Catastrophe. A little plot twist arrives when it is revealed that Andy isn't just a powerless ESPer, but a spy who came aboard according to a plan by the US. A week passes since Andy arrived at the ship, and things are going pretty usual at the ship, as everyone is enjoying their lives for now. Andy's abilities reveal to be able to negate ESP attacks that even denies ESPers like Yugiri to read his mind, causing her to feel sick from the recoil. Andy reports back to the USEI superior how nothing interesting has happened so far on the ship, and Maggie, who had looked into Andy's background, reveals his suspicions while having a chat with Hyoubu at the bar. Hyoubu decides to test Andy's worth as a comrade in a real-life situation, and takes him along with the other members of Pandra to a deal with the mafia boss, Carlo, an old acquaintance of Hyoubu from a long time ago. Our group is welcomed by another mafia in the city, and they successfully deal with them after splitting up in their own ways. Despite the attack, Hyoubu moves on to have the smuggling deal with Carlo while having Andy as a sniper. Hyoubu is revealed to be older than he looks as he met Carlo in World War II. The deal proceeds, and after realizing something, Hyoubu signals Andy to shoot Carlo. Andy starts to hesitate, and it is revealed that Hyoubu had already thought about this part as well when he uses his own clones to kill Carlo, who turned out to be a bot himself. Hyoubu gives a limiter like his own to Andy, so his powers won't bother others in the group. Later on, Hyoubu and Carlo, who were in another building, get into a battle of ESPers, and Hyoubu proves his worth as the leader after absolutely demolishing Carlos's body in the fight. Andy officially becomes a member of the crew, and just when the crew relaxes a little, two agents from a Japanese agency arrive to take part in an upcoming party at Monarch. Sakaki and Minamoto arrive at the Kingdom of Monarch to attend the party held by Princess Sophie Grace for ESPer organizations, and are a little troubled to find out that Hyoubu and his crew are also attending the function. The Japanese duo gets into a little argument with Hyoubu, and it is revealed that they are working for an opposing organization called Babel from Japan. The argument breaks up, and a sudden power cut alarms everyone of the missing princess, who has been supposedly kidnapped by Pandra. At the Pandra stronghold, Sophie wakes up to find out that she was kidnapped to keep her safe from an assassination upon Yugiri's request. Sophie gets along with Yugiri well, while Hyoubu decides to play a little game and lets Sophie go out with Yugiri to have fun in the city, while constantly feeding the wrong information about their location to Babel. Babel tries its best to track the princess down, and Minamoto digs into a little information on the USB he got from Hyoubu. Sophie roams around the city with Yugiri and remarks that she remembers her from an orphanage she used to visit frequently. The trip is disturbed when the assassin who was after Sophie finally locates her and is about to shoot her down when Andy saves her by jumping in front of her. Yugiri gets emotional and is about to release a surge attack when Hyoubu arrives and restrains the assassin, letting him get arrested later. Our crew heads back to Catastrophe after Yugiri bids farewell to the princess, and Hyoubu promises her to take care of Yugiri for the rest of his life. The crew arrives in Japan to deal with some important matters, and Hyoubu looks forward to meeting his so-called queen. Andy is in the back room of Catastrophe, where he is reporting back to the US headquarters as usual. Andy's senior hints at how Andy's mission is related to stealing something from the Catastrophe. He tries to sneak into the authorized area on the ship, but is interfered by Fujira and Yugiri. Catastrophe gets attacked by Babel, who sends an infamous group of powerful espers called the Children to attack. The ship loads its defense mechanism as Hyoubu heads out to deal with Kaoru, while Andy gets attacked by Aoi and Shiho. Andy gets detained by the girls, who manage to steal the ship's master key from Momotaro and use it to hack the main computer system of Catastrophe while taking down members of Pandra. The children get their job done and back out, while Andy gets caught trying to sneak in by Hyoubu. Pandra regroups again and decides to launch an attack back to gain control of the ship's computer again. Hyoubu takes Andy alongside him and leaves him to deal with Fujiko, while the others keep the children distracted. Andy manages to neutralize Fujiko with his second ESPer ability and gains enough time for the crew to get control of Catastrophe back after dealing with the hacking system. Hyoubu takes Andy back to safety, and the children decide to launch a large-scale attack in their desperation to get Catastrophe under control. Hyoubu steps up to the challenge and retaliates with a giant blast after taking his limiter off, blowing the girls back. The crew surprises everyone at Babel when they escape the scene after getting Catastrophe to fly above the enemy ship. This gave me goosebumps right there. Babel reflects upon what happened just now, and it turns out that despite being some of the world's most powerful espers, the children are just a group of little girls after all, as they cry while blaming the failure of the plan on Sakaki-sensei hilariously. After the recent fight with the children, Andy accompanies Yugiri and others on a little trip to Tokyo, while the Catastrophe is back at repairs. Hyoubu checks up on the situation before leaving to deal with some urgent personal matters, while Andy and the company follow Yugiri around as she looks to buy presents. Hyoubu turns out to be sneaking into Babel to do some checkups, while the others leave Andy the babysitting part as they have some stuff to look up, and Andy takes Yugiri around before he realizes that someone is on his tail. He confronts Minamoto, who was following him alongside the director of Babel, Fujiko. They claim that they are aware of Andy being a US spy and pitch their plan to go against Pandra together, while reassuring that Yugiri is being looked after by Sakaki outside. Andy initially declines, but later asks about Hyoubu from Fujiko, where she reveals that she knows him from a long time ago and how he started his rebellion, killing a whole army after his superiors turned against him. The negotiation continues, while Hyoubu is shown to be performing some tests on himself at Babel, and leaves quickly before someone arrives to check up the test room. At the amusement park, Yugiri tries to use her power to help a boy who got lost, and getting recognized by the crowd as an esper makes her upset, forcing her to release a surge of hallucination powers. Andy rushes to help her and suppresses her power before the whole crew arrives at the location and flees back to their stronghold. At the stronghold, Momiji explains a little backstory about how she was saved by Hyoubu after her parents were killed in an attack against all espers. She remarks that everyone here is pretty much like that, and they are sticking close to Hyoubu out of their own will, staying as his family. The backstory wraps up, and it turns out that the crew had planned a birthday party for their leader. Hyoubu pulls up to the stronghold, and the rest happily wish him a happy birthday while giving him gifts of their own. A remark by Andy hints at Hyoubu's medical condition, as he might not have enough time to celebrate the birthday next year. Andy remembers the time when he used to be a misfit among the espers, and how he was recruited into the USEI secret department by the government. Andy Sr. reminds him that the time has come for him to execute the mission he came on board as a spy for. Hyoubu shows signs of physical weakness on the deck of the ship before he reveals their next mission to be the retrieval of a new device in the United States named ECM. The plan is set to be executed on the day after tomorrow, and the crew is hanging out while rumors about Hyoubu spread around the catastrophe. Andy is also curious about the matter, but is called by Yugiri, who demands him to read her a bedtime story. Andy visits the library afterwards and overhears Hyoubu having a conversation with a spirit he summoned before he runs away, dropping his limiter at the spot for Hyoubu to find out. Andy had forwarded the information about the mission to Babel, and they planned out a trap ahead of time just without involving the children. The crew executes the mission but is interrupted by Babel just as they planned. Hyoubu concludes that this is too good to be a coincidence and chases after Andy, who was heading back to Catastrophe to accomplish his mission and secure the power core of the ship named Ihachiko. Hyoubu gets bothered by Kaoru, who came along despite the refusal, and Hyoubu goes full power against her, defeating her but taking a toll on his body in exchange. Back at the ship, Andy was slowed down by Yugiri, who happened to be waiting for Hyoubu, and just when he reached to take the Ihachiko out, Hyoubu pulled up on him, remarking that he was aware of Andy's identity already. Hyoubu shows the battle mark on his forehead to Andy, while remarking that Andy has to die now, just like he once did. The story takes a little spin from the chaotic present, and we get to know a young Hyoubu who came to live with Fujiko and his father in Japan. Since both of the children were ESPers, they wanted to get acknowledgement from those around them, and the opportunity arrived when Captain Eiji from the army came to recruit them in the new ESPer unit. The kids declined at first, but later agreed to join the ranks. A year passes by, and things get problematic for Japan as they get into war with the United States. The situation in the country was bad due to war, and Hyoubu, who was outside, gets scolded by a man for wearing fancy clothes that Fujiko gave him. The man's lecture was interrupted by Fujiko, who stood up for Hyoubu and ended up humiliating the man in front of a crowd before realizing that he was from the Navy unit. The inevitable happened, and the Navy released an order to shut the ESPer unit down. With the whole unit at risk, Captain Eiji came up with a bet against the Navy by proposing a duel against the Navy's state-of-the-art Zero aircraft. Eiji picks Hyoubu to be the representative of the ESP unit and to fulfill the big task ahead of him. Hyoubu starts to train for the match, but is unable to go all out with his abilities because of his father's words. Fujiko encourages Hyoubu to go all out and win the duel after the training session in the hot spring. The day of the duel arrives, and it is revealed that the man piloting the plane is the same Navy officer who caused the whole issue due to the incident with the kids. The game begins, but Hyoubu gets pushed back as he is still unable to use his powers to their maximum extent due to memories of his father refraining him to do so. Hyoubu remembers Eiji in his words, and manages to overcome the fear to successfully defeat the Zero aircraft fair and square. His celebration gets interrupted by a battle that broke out close to them. 3 dolphins were running away from an attack, but one of them ended up getting killed by a torpedo. Hyoubu took charge and went ahead to use his powers to save the dolphins, finally feeling a sense of achievement. The happiness turned out not to be so long-lasting, as a few years had passed and Japan had surrendered after the nuclear blast at Hiroshima ended the war. Eiji remarks that with the calculations of Ihachiko, Hyoubu will turn out to be a danger for the whole humankind and decides to kill Hyoubu, shooting him 3 times. Things turned out to be not in Eiji's favor when Hyoubu stood up in rage and after killing him, swore to destroy the normals who did not let him and his friends live a peaceful life. Back to the present, the argument between Andy and Hyoubu continues, and against Hyoubu's calculation, Andy somehow manages to neutralize Ihachiko, claiming that his mission was just to retrieve and get it fixed. Just when Catastrophe's defense system fails, the US government launches a large-scale attack on Pandra, while referring to the ESPers as monsters. Hyoubu leaves alone to deal with the attack by himself, while the army invades the ship to create problems for the children on board. Back in the US, the rest of the crew is left alone by Miyamoto and Babel, as they reveal that they wanted to stop Bandra to save them from the following attack. The crew returns to help the children out, but Yugiri gets captured by the government. Andy tries to stop them, but his superior betrays him and shoots him before getting away. Maggie tells Hyoubu that all the ESPers believe in him, and the crew evacuates everyone on the ship. Andy turns out to be safe as the bullet had hit his limiter, and Hyoubu goes for a giant attack to blast all the incoming projectiles in a single shot. Hyoubu takes his limiter off yet again despite his physical condition and blows away all of the enemy attackers just except a single one that ends up destroying Catastrophe completely, while the unconscious Hyoubu and Andy were still on board. Hyoubu is about to drown when Andy arrives to save him. The two are in the middle of nowhere when they get rescued by Fujiko from Babel. Fujiko and Minamoto took Hyoubu to the Tsubomi estate where his condition is revealed to be critical from all that use of power. Andy is in another lab where Oboro, alongside the children, removed the tracking chip that the US had inside Andy's body to track his location. The children force Oboro to reveal Hyoubu's location, and after having a conversation with the girls, Andy follows along with them to have a meeting with Hyoubu at the estate. Kaoru reveals her take on the situation to Andy. Andy pays Hyoubu a visit, and Hyoubu gets angry at him as expected, demanding to know the name of the person who contacted them back at Catastrophe. Andy claims to not be aware of the man's real name, but with his hint, Hyoubu concludes that he must be Iji, who is somehow alive. Hyoubu gets angry after coming to know about this, and passes out from energy overuse. He wakes up to realize that Kaoru has volunteered to do a blood transfusion to stabilize his condition, and after completely recovering, Hyoubu moves on to get his revenge on Eiji and secure Yugiri back from the base. He is interrupted by Kaoru, who tries to stop him from doing anything reckless, but Hyoubu, who is filled with rage, rejects her offer to move forward